you here. So, Alice, as you said, we had reduced competition, only a few major players in the market, less pressure to innovate, lower prices or improve quality, which reduces consumer choice, and that's horrifically bad. How do I delete that? Oh, here we go. There we go. Reduce consumer choices and lead to stagnant markets. We also, a thing that I didn't introduce last time, but is true of a lot of oligopolistic markets, is the idea of collusion. Amy, what do you think collusion means? Do you know that word?
No.
No? What do you think? So we say firms may collude with one another to control prices. So what do you think if we look at that kind of bit there? Does that give you a hint as to what collusion might mean? Any ideas, Amy?
I don't know.
Okay, that's no problem. So when we talk about collusion, so we've got an oligopolistic market, and this is when we've only got a few firms, and they're all quite big, and they all have a fairly significant market control. So everyone knows their competition, right? We're not in kind of a slightly more normal market where you've got lots and lots of firms competing for market share. We've only got a few. And so because everyone knows each other and everyone knows what they're doing, this means that people can work together to manipulate the market. They can collude. And so when they collude with one another, they could control prices, or they could limit output, or they could work together to maximize their market shares. And they could create stuff like a phrase we call barriers to entry, right? So barriers to entry would stop competition from being able to enter the market. So Disney would probably struggle to do this entirely because the costs involved with making a film have gone down considerably over the last few decades. Now all you need is a camera and the will to make a film. So in terms of kind of Disney creating barriers to entry, probably slightly more difficult. But there are other industries where there are quite significant barriers to entry. For instance, if we were looking at the production of oil, right? Oil's used in making petrol for cars and planes and trains. It's also used in a lot of production processes. There's lots of things in your rooms right now that oil was deeply involved in either making or getting it to you. And in the 1970s, so a few years before even I was born, we had the OPEC countries, which are all the oil producing countries in the world, started colluding to increase the price of oil, right? And the OPEC countries have very high barriers to entry because not every country has oil, right? And so they could use that to their advantage to collude and increase prices, reduce output, and maximize their market share. Okay. And so when we're talking about barriers to entry, oligopolies often have or can collude to create high barriers to entry, which makes it difficult for new firms to enter the market and compete effectively. And then the last thing we talked about was job losses. So the consolidation, so that's just people gaining their market share. Big firms can then increase their power in the market and make their processes more efficient, which reduces the number of job losses and makes more redundant positions. So these were some of the, I apologize for the not amazing lines on those, but some of the downsides of oligopolies, right? So last Wednesday, I asked you all to go away and look for an oligopoly